Welcome to my garden, to the GinGeeGoodEarth production, Roman numeral 7, part 14. We will be reading A Universal History of the United States of America on page 404, and we're going to start chapter 5, which will go into the Great American Indian War. That's on chapter 5 on page 104. The French and Indian War. Okay, so that's going to start on page 104. The French and Indian War, which commenced in 1756 and continued to 1763. The war, which ended in 1748. And I will be going over some recipes from the Stouffer's restaurant manual. And again, today is July 9th. And in celebration, woohoo! Woohoo! In celebration, I have been recording videos for 3 months, and so that's why I want to definitely get this video out today. And so let's begin the celebration by giving you the recipe to Glacier Gold. Looks like a scoop taken from the golden iceberg. Tastes good too. Take 1/4 ounce simple syrup, 1/2 ounce triple sec, 1/3 ounce lemon juice, 1/4 ounce lime juice, 1/4 ounce orange juice, and 1 1/8 ounce of amber rum. Mound ice as shown in a special Glacier Gold saucer glass or champagne glass. That will be fine. Illustrated above, and I'll show you the picture. This is from the Stouffer's manual. It's very icy. There, you can see the iris flower. And use an orange as the base. So basically when it means use an orange at the base, slice your orange and put segments at the bottom of the base of the drink. It just really is refreshing. And then with the ice, and then you shake the ingredients before pouring over the orange base and cracked ice, and then you put that in the prepared glass, and that should be delicious. And it's from the Stouffer's restaurant manual on beverages. And I read the introduction in an earlier episode. And just to remind you, as I pan my set, we can see the Brazilian doll holding fruit on the top in a basket, and a first American Indian gal. And then we have a Victorian woman dressed in Victorian dress, and we have a calling card at the bottom with my love. It says, and there's the Pittsburgh Victorian Gibson girls at Stephen Foster Memorial. There we are, way back when. And then we have a Revolutionary doll. And again, chapter 5 is on the French and Indian War, which was a very long-lasting event. And again, we want peace and not war. And we have another first American Indian woman. And then we have our American flag. And I have the hydrangeas, like a baby blue sky color. And then we have the American flag above it. So we panned the area pretty good. And again, I'll be finishing up the book on the Vikings. And I have The Last of the Mohicans, and I'll be reading The Snake Doctor. And I'm also going to read parts of a new book called Killing the Planet, How a Financial Cartel Doomed Mankind. And again, we are living in a pandemic. It has been declared a pandemic on the world since March 11th. And I'll be doing a special reading on a brochure called Our People, A Description of Native American Culture. So I'll be reading that today. But to help celebrate, I would like to go ahead and start on the book that we've been reading now for 3 months, A Universal History of the United States of America. And I'm going to read at the bottom of page 103 to get situated. And look and see. Best wishes to everybody today. And thank you again for watching my channel, GinGeeGoodEarth. This is a celebration today because I have been videotaping with YouTube now for 3 months today. And I'd like to welcome everybody to start at the very first video and work your way to the 47th video, which this is. Now today I will be making sure I make it to 50 videos. So I'll be working all day to make sure I get at least 50 videos in, since this is my anniversary for 90 days or 3 months of recording videos. Again, I have a disclaimer at each video. I am going to do another video on cats tonight. So I only have one, and that's made for kids only. And then the other one tonight, which I will make, is on cats, and that'll be for kids only. And again, history is so important, and we learn from our past, and everything is relevant. And what's to be amazed is that through the different wars and the great barbarism and the difficulty, it looks as though the people rose above the injustice, and they pushed for freedom, liberty, peace, and happiness for all. And I think one of the avenues that was so important to define the colonial patriotism, and the combination of First Americans' wealth of knowledge, and again, Iroquois Nation played a role in formulating the American Constitution and the Bill of Rights, because they had a very good system of civics themselves, and they need to be acknowledged for that. And I have books on this, and we will go on to this. But I want to read this book in its entirety because it's one of the oldest books that I have acquired, and it goes over 1450 through 1830. And so we will begin, and I'm going to start the recording of the music in the background again. So you enjoy the picture show while I go. Those are wood turtles in Pennsylvania. Woohoo! Celebrating 50 videos today on GinGeeGoodEarth YouTube channel. And I want to start out with a great thought of the day. I want to sing like the birds sing, not worrying about who hears or what they think. Rumi. Page 103, A Universal History of the United States of America. Intelligence of this event spread like lightning through the country. The French flag was still standing upon the walls of Louisburg, which decoyed several India ships supposed to be worth £600,000. Well might the citizens of New England be elated with these glad tidings. Without even a suggestion from the mother country, their commerce and fisheries were now secure. France, fired with resentment at her loss, made extraordinary exertions to retrieve it and to elicit chastisements on New England. Inflict chastisements on New England. The next summer, let me read that again. I had to get my flashlight. The French flag was still standing upon the walls of Louisburg, which decoyed several India ships, supposed to be worth £600,000. Well might the citizens of New England be elated with these glad tidings. Without even a suggestion from the mother country, their commerce and fisheries were now secure. France, fired with resentment at her loss, made extraordinary exertions to retrieve it and to inflict chastisement on New England. The next summer she dispatched to the American coast a powerful fleet carrying a large number of soldiers. The news of its approach spread terror throughout New England, but an uncommon succession of disasters, which the pious of that time attributed to special interposition of Providence, deprived it of all power to inflict injury. After remaining a short time on the coast, it returned to France, having lost 2 admirals, both of whom, it was supposed, put an end to their lives through chagrin, having also by tempests been reduced to 1/2 its force, and effected nothing. In 1748, peace was concluded, each party restored all its prisoners and conquests, a striking but not uncommon illustration of the folly of war. Louisburg, though conquered by the colonies, was exchanged by Great Britain for territories which she had lost in Europe. New England murmured at this injustice, but what avail the murmurs of the weak? In 1750, an act was passed prohibiting the exportation of hats out of the plantations of America, and to restrain the number of apprentices taken by the hat makers. Beaver skin top hats were made. Also an act providing a penalty of £100 for the erection of any mill for slitting or rolling of iron, or any plating forge to work with the tilt hammer. Chapter 5. The French and Indian War, which commenced in 1756 and continued to 1763. The war, which ended in 1748 for a short period, gave peace to America, and the population in the 13th colonies amounted to 1,100,000. Scarcely had the colonies time to reap the benefits of peace before their prospect was clouded, and the sound of war filled the land with general anxiety and distress. In 1756, the 18th of May, Great Britain declared war against France. The general cause leading to this war, commonly called the French and Indian War, was the encroachment of the French upon Nova Scotia, which had been ceded to Great Britain by the 12th article of the Treaty of Utrecht. About this time, a company of English traders established trading houses on the banks of Ohio. The French seized some of the traders and conveyed them prisoners to Canada. A tribe of Indians in Ohio, among whom the English had been trading, resented the seizure, and by way of retaliation, took several French traders and sent them to Pennsylvania. The Ohio Company complained to Dinwiddie, governor of Virginia, who laid the subject before the Assembly, which ordered a messenger to be dispatched to the French commander in Ohio, and required him to withdraw his troops. Our beloved Washington happened to hear it, and instantly waited on his Excellency, offered his services, but not without being terribly afraid lest his want of a beard should go against him. However, the governor was so charmed with his modesty and manly air that he never asked him a syllable about his age, but after thanking him for a noble youth, and insisting on his taking a glass of wine with him, slipped a commission into his hand. The next day, accompanied by the interpreter with a couple of servants, he set out on his expedition, which was from start to pole as disagreeable and dangerous as anything Hercules himself had wished. Soaking rains, chilling blasts, roaring floods, pathless woods, and mountains clad in snows opposed his course, but opposed in vain. The glorious ambition to serve his country imparted an animation to his nerves, which rendered him superior to all difficulties. Returning homewards, he was waylaid and shot at by a French Indian. And though the copper-colored ruffian was not 15 steps distant when he fired at him, yet not even so much as the smell of lead passed on the clothes of our young hero. On his return to Virginia, it was found that he had executed his negotiations both with the French and Indians with such fidelity and judgment that he received the heartiest thanks of the governor of the council for the very important services he had done his country. He was now in the 20th of the year of his age, appointed major and adjunct general of the Virginia forces. Soon after this, the Indians, continuing their encroachments, orders were given by the English government for the colonies to arm and untie in one confederacy. Virginia took the lead and raised a regiment of 400 men, at the head of which she placed her darling Washington. With this handful of brave fellows, Colonel Washington, not yet 23 years of age, boldly pushed into the Indian country, and there for a considerable time Hannibal Ike maintained the war against 3 times the number of French and Indians. I have to read that again. With this handful of brave fellows, Colonel Washington, not yet 23 years of age, boldly pushed out into the Indian country, and there for a considerable time Hannibal maintained the war against 3 times the number of French and Indians. At the Redstones he came up with a strong party of the enemy, whom he engaged and eventually defeated, after having killed and taken 31 men. From his prisoners he obtained undoubted intelligence that the French forces on the Ohio And again, the Ohio River is one of the widest rivers in America, consisted of upwards of thousands regulars and many hundreds of Indians. But notwithstanding this disheartening advice, he still pressed on undauntedly against the enemy, and at a place called Little Meadows built a fort which he called Fort Necessity. And again, that's located near Nemacolin Woodlands, which is a 5-star hotel. And Fort Necessity you can visit quite often. And again, from my memory, General Braddock, his tomb is there nearby. And Fort Necessity is a great place to visit and learn the history of New York and Pennsylvania. He built a fort which he called Fort Necessity. Here he waited hourly and anxiously, looking for the succors from New York and Pennsylvania, but he looked in vain. Nobody came to his assistance. Not long after, and his small force, now reduced to 300 men, were attacked by the army of 1,100 French and Indians. Never did the true Virginian valor shine more gloriously than on this trying occasion. To see 300 young fellows commanded by a smooth-faced 23-year-old boy, man, all unaccustomed to the terrors of war, far from home and from all hopes of help, shut up in the dreary wilderness, and surrounded by 4 times their number of savage foes, and yet without sign of fear, without thought of surrender, preparing for mortal combat. Oh, it was noble sight! Scarcely since the days of Leonidas and his 300 deathless Spartans had the sun beheld its equal. With the hideous whoops and yells, the enemy came on like a host of tigers. The woods, the rocks, and the tall tree tops, as the Indians, climbing to the tops of the trees, poured down their bullets into the fort, where in one continued blaze and crash of firearms. Nor were our young warriors idle, but animated by their gallant chief, plowed their rifles in such spirit that their little fort resembled a volcano in full blast, roaring and discharging thick sheets of liquid fire, and of laden deaths among their foes for 3 glorious hours, salamander-like, enveloped in smoke and flame. They sustained the attack of the enemy's whole force, and laid 200 of them dead on the spot. Discouraged by such a desperate resistance, the French general, the Count de Villiers, sent in a flag to Washington, extolling his gallantry to the skies, and offering him the most honorable terms. It was stipulated that Colonel Washington and his little band of heroes should march away with all the honors of war, and carry with them their military stores and baggage. So now we're on page 107, and I'm going to bookmark it there because I got to take a break. And I want to welcome you to my garden, the GinGeeGoodEarth production, Roman numeral 7, part 14, A Universal History of the United States of America, July 9th, 2020. And I have to put the July 9th, 2020, USA, take 1. Now I'd like to read introductions. Our people And I'll flash my flashlight on it. Our people. A description. Our people, our future. A description of Native American culture.